Holy cow, Nick Fistoli. This is what the Tampa game should have been. Last second field goal, made a few mistakes, left some points on the board or whatever. Mac Jones puts them in a position to win it. Only this time they get a break or two, a pass. I mean, a roughing the passer penalty that you can save with it what you will, but that gets called 100 times out of 100 in the NFL. More importantly, this time, instead of letting Big Dick Nick try and convert a 56-yarder, they give him a chip shot after they bleed the clock. And there is a world of difference between 1 and 4 and still tied with the Jets in last place in the AFC East and back to 2 and 3. So how are you feeling this week after this one?
I think we needed a big win, especially on the road. That was huge. I feel like we have a decent schedule coming down the slot, but this was definitely a good start to that schedule. Obviously, I think the offense, they played well. I mean, we're missing half of our offensive starting line, and they played much better, I think, than last week with the starters. And to have, honestly, one of my favorite returners back, Jamie Collins, that was a great showing by him. He had a couple tackles and 1 sack, and that was fantastic.
Yeah, and for a while there, you didn't even notice Collins being on the field. Like I at this point, as we're recording this, I don't know how many reps he had, but he made an impact. And the thing about Collins is, when I heard that he'd been released by Detroit, and everyone naturally goes right to the Belichick marching out of the tunnel at Detroit gif that everyone does. I was like, okay, which Jamie Collins am I getting? Because if he's been anything in his career, it's been inconsistent. I don't know how much you get into analytics, but Pro Football Focus gives everybody a grade with the maximum being 99. And over Collins' career, he's like a 90 when he's with New England, and he's like in the 50s the rest of his career. And so I'm like, am I going to get Jamie Collins from the first half of 2019? Because he was all over the field. He was an impact player. He made tackles for loss. He had a defensive touchdown, interceptions, batting balls down, metric butt ton of sacks or whatever. And then whether it was injury or whatever, he just disappeared. And the team went from 8-0 to the rest of the way going 4-5, including the playoffs. And I'm not saying it was directly related to Collins. I'm just saying, like, here's a guy that you don't know what he's going to be. He's a box of chocolates, and you just want to make sure the Patriots are getting the good kind with like nougat and caramel in there, and not the crappy kind with like a nut or that weirdo pink strawberry stuff that tastes like friggin' glue. And in a short sample size, we got the good Jamie Collins.
Yes, we did.
And Matt Judon continues to be not just their best free agent, but the best player on the team this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that defense, we're kind of getting more solidified as the weeks go on, and seeing the defense especially come together. And it was tough losing Gilmore. But hey, we got that 6th round pick.
Yeah, there we are in 2023. So if you're somebody, maybe you've been declared that you're terminal, maybe you're in hospice care. If you're looking for a reason to hold on, just to keep watching the sun come up in the morning, the 2023 6th round draft pick. We're gonna have to get into this during the show at large today, because I'm still semi-baffled about that. How many times have, even in the short time we've been doing the show and we've talked to personnel, I've said to you, the thing that's most surprising about Belichick is he still has the ability to surprise me. And releasing Stephon Gilmore when he did, and then trading him for, a bag of balls, is beyond any, like, that's the one outcome of all this I never saw coming. And there you go. And it was looking like an atrocious move for the first, how many possessions in a row did Houston score? I think it was their first 4.
First 4, yeah.
Yeah. And the Do Your Pod account tweeted out we're buying around if the
Yeah.
if the Texans punt on this drive, and they did, and then it was that idiotic punt that went off the back of someone's helmet, and from there on, the entire game changed.
Yeah.
And I just leave that to Houston just getting too cute, because they kept going for it. They kept going for it. And then they went for it on that 4th and 2, but then didn't, and then dropped back. And it was like, it's kind of like when the Colts tried that fake punt formation or whatever. Like you just, you just outthought yourself. The way they were playing, just kick it away. You're going to make a stop. And then, the Patriots are certainly not going to. And the secondary had a horrific game, at least for the first half.
Yeah, well, we were missing Mills. That's a huge stone for us, I think.
Yeah,
he's been playing fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get how the week before he managed to throw for 87 yards and 4 touchdowns. Didn't catch that game. Didn't occur to me to go back and watch it. I know this. I said going into the draft, if the Patriots don't get Jones, let's say he comes off the board before they can get him, I'd take a flyer on Mills in like the 3rd or 4th round. I think he's an NFL ready quarterback. I didn't think he was this good.
Oh no, I was talking about our defense. We were missing Jalen Mills.
Oh, Jalen Mills. Okay, I'm thinking Davis.
Yeah,
of course,
no,
of course.
Sorry.
No,
yeah.
No, you're 100% right about Jalen Mills.
Mm-hmm.
He's been, without question, their second best free agent signing, and missing him today. And okay, he lost ground today to Hunter Henry, who played his butt off. But we're going to talk about all of these things with our guest, and I'm excited to have this guy, Rich Shertenlieb of the Touch on the Rich Morning Show, the #1 morning show rated in Boston, and he's has me on the show a lot, and I know we're gonna have a friggin' blast talking to him. So join us. Stay tuned after the theme song. We're gonna have Rich Shertenlieb on. Rich Shertenlieb, if I'm not being untoward, because when Nick and I started this podcast, we said the last thing we're going to be is toward. We're not going to allow any towardness on here. Can I call myself a friend of the Toucher and Rich show?
Oh, there's no question. There is no question. You are you're more than a friend. You would be a cozy relative. How about that?
Good. Okay. Because I want that. I mean, not just because we spoon on the couch and watch This Is Us together, but because like friends, I will steal from you at any given moment. And I stole this bit from you. Nick, are you familiar with Jack Easterby?
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. Now, if you're not, he was the Patriots, I guess for lack of a better word, team chaplain. His official title was their character coach.
Sure.
I called him the morality coordinator. And he was the subject of all these like glowing articles, some on the Patriots website, some in like the local papers about what a great asset he is, and the Patriots are thinking outside the box. He now runs the Houston Texans, and if there's a reason why them beating the Texans was bigger than just a L in the standings turned into a W, it's because this tool bag, this bulb-headed, jug-eared goon who considers himself like holier than thou, not only has been like a drag on the Patriots, the team that gave him his career. I am convinced he is the multiple sources on 100 hatchet jobs against the Patriots. But he does stand up.
Everybody says his phrase in his shoes. It's like, yo, we got to go park the car. Like, we got to do what? What are you talking about? We got to go park the car. I'm like, what are you?
Yes, that's the guy that they beat, not just.
You got to park the car. When you're out west, everyone's like, yo, dude, I'm surfing after the game, dude. Gotta surf out west, man. And the Midwest, they're like, don't you know? Don't you know? Hey, don't you know? Don't you know? Just throwing stereotypes out there, don't you know? And in Texas, are like, hey, I'm a Texas guy. And look,
I put my thumbs underneath my armpits. In New York, they say, what you looking at? What you looking at?
That's New York. What you? Ain't your kid, ain't your son. What's up, kid? Ain't your kid, ain't your son. Park the car. Oh my God. And you know what, Jared, I don't know what. So when everybody saw that the first time, and that's a clip that ended up going viral. when everybody saw that, everyone was like, look at this awful stand-up set that this guy did. And I immediately knew that that wasn't a stand-up set because I had seen that exact thing 1,000 times growing up in the South. You know what that was? That was a youth pastor testimony. That's when the youth pastor gets up there and tries to say, I'm not your dad's religion guy, okay? I come with jokes. And they're the lamest, like they're worse than dad jokes. They're like God dad jokes, which are 1,000,000 times lamer. So like, I mean, I remember because I was raised, like my parents moved from New York. I was born in New York. My dad took a job down in this map dot called Kennesaw, Georgia, where literally it's the law that you have to own a handgun in that town. That's how like crazy redneck it is. So it was like kind of like a middle finger to some town that outlawed guns. It was like you pull into town, and I'm not joking, there's a billboard with a revolver on it, and it says, it's the law in Kennesaw. But at our school, they get us out of class to have these youth pastors come in. I didn't go to religious school. I went to a public school. And they would come in and be like, all right, you know, I was listening to J.O. on the way in today, you know, Joan Osborne. And what if God was one of us? I was thinking, you know, just a slob like one of us. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, I've seen this Jack Easterby guy 1,000,000 times, and it's vomit inducing. And then at the end, he tries to bring it back down. Enough jokes for a minute. Let's talk about Jesus Christ. You know, Jesus Christ is a lot like the Patriots. And you're like, oh my God, everything he said. And the only dumb owner in the league that would buy this guy's crap is Cal McNair. Here's a reference for you, because I know you're as nerdy as I am. Easterby is the worm tongue to Cal McNair's King Theoden.
Oh,
He's the guy whispering everything in his ear and telling him what to do.
keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. I didn't come through fire and death to bandy words with a witless worm. Okay, yeah, you just pulled my Tolkien thread, and we're gonna do the rest of this podcast just like Gimli and Legolas quotes. But you know, I'm so glad that you picked off that this where he was coming from on this. Like, this is that speech he's given in 1,000 like, I don't know, like religious camps,
Yes.
and you know, like raffles, and like, hey kids, you know, I'm not just some square. Like, you know, Jesus is all of us. In fact, he's like this surfer dude from California, and but it's incredible. Like, you think like Frank Caliendo can inhabit a character, or it's amazing how which is, I'm thinking of the guy from SNL, Bill Hader. How he can just go from like one voice to another.
Yeah.
These characters are so spot on. He's like Robin Williams was,
sure.
you know, and
it's like I'm there. I'm listening to that, and I'm like, it's the perfect recipe for a hostile takeover of an organization. You have this completely lame dude that only lame people would be a sucker for, and the most lame of all owners in Cal McNair. Like, even Mark Davis would be like, this dude sucks. His like white moose knuckle jeans, even he'd be like, dude, this guy's full of crap. He's not funny. And that guy probably laughs at, I don't know,
Carrot Top,
sure.
Gallagher. Oh no, I don't want to get watermelon squishes on me. This is great. I'm gonna hire a prop comic to run my team. And this is, yeah. So whatever bad happens to Houston, as long as this guy is a part of it,
oh yeah,
is well deserved.
And the thing too, Jerry, is that like the more like we started talking about this guy, there was this account that was just hated us for it, and they would say, how dare you talk this? Like, apparently this audio got passed around. We were ripping on the guy. It was like, Jack Easterby is a much respected leader of men, and he has, you know, it's not his fault that it was all Bill O'Brien's fault and all this stuff, and then like the cow, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there and I'm going through his Twitter timeline because he was so angry at us for ripping on him, and I realized that every one of the tweets was about how awesome Jack Easterby is, and there was nothing else. All it was in defense of Jack Easterby. Everybody sucks. Like someone searched Jack Easterby's name and refuted what everyone was saying. And I think we were on the other side of a Jack Easterby burner account. I mean, this dude was so pissed off every time we mentioned this guy's name, and he went after our listeners. He went after everybody because of that.
Geez, I think I ripped that off from you too. I mean, I know I did the burner account. I did a blog on that, and it had like, it was the name on it, I think was like his middle name or something. Like it was, whatever it was this like the most half-assed attempt. Like if you're going to have a burner account for the sole purpose of defending you publicly,
Sure.
mix it up a little. Throw, you know what I mean? Once in a while, just throw in a, hey, I'm watching Tombstone on CMT right now. I love this movie. No, but if it's nothing but praise of you,
Oh yeah.
it's not going to last a weekend before somebody's going to put 2 and 2 together. And
But isn't that something that Jack Easterby would do, knowing how lame he is and just how completely out of touch? That's totally something. And I think it had like some like reference to God, like some number in there. It was like 777, I think, was like in his name or number. There was some weird kind of God reference in there too. And I'm like, I bet that guy can't do anything without having to throw that in there in case God is indeed watching him on Twitter.
And you know, the Lord is probably like a huge follower of his, I'm sure. And look, I like religious people.
Sure.
I like ambitious people. Really religious, ambitious people traditionally, historically hasn't worked out well for the world. I'm just going to throw that out there. And so if you, the fact that this guy resents the Patriots because he couldn't get a job making personnel decisions when his whole thing was like, you know, lead the team prayer, or Matthew Slater won the Walter Payton Award, and he got to be the one to say, hey, we've got some great news, and, you know, put Mrs. Walter Payton on the phone. It was a nice moment. Just skate your lane, dude. But you know what? He's one of 32 human beings on earth who say, I'm in charge of an NFL franchise, and only in America. I don't know how he did it.
I'm just fascinated, Jerry, by that franchise, like everything about it. I mean, you know, from the top, you know, even like Cal McNair, because after all this stuff happened, we heard those stories about, was it Sage Rosenfeld who had that story, who said he went into his office one day to meet him for the first time, and there was nothing in Cal's office. He was sitting on his floor, and except there was a flat screen in which he was playing video games. This is a grown ass man, just like acting like, you know, the kid from Big. Just so that you got that, you got Easterby, and then, you know, there's the new stuff about, you know, Bill O'Brien trying to get himself fired that came out from this book, which I thought was hysterical, because then obviously, you know, you just failed up, I guess. But I mean, like that whole organization and how close they've come, you know, year after year to almost being like really good team, like a really good, they had one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that whole thing kind of blew up. But then they had like, I mean, JJ Watt, and every year they found a way to just self-sabotage. It's just a strange organization that I'm kind of fascinated with, to be quite honest.
Yeah, you know, when Nick and I first started talking, we were discussing the Stephon Gilmore trade, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And shocking that they would settle for a 6th round pick 2 years from now, and for a guy that won the Defensive Player of the Year. But they did worse with DeAndre Hopkins, because he was, you know, not north of 31 years old, and he was not like on the last year of a contract. You know, I mean, there's an argument for saying Stephon Gilmore is sort of damaged goods. I don't want to put too fine a point on that, but they traded this guy, a superstar in the league, for nothing. It immediately alienated Deshaun Watson, and can't even get rid of him because he's a distressed asset for sure. And Nick, you were probably 10 years old when this happened, but I'm going to reference maybe the turning point in the history of the Texans, and then we'll get into the game itself. But when they came to Foxborough as an 11-1 team, are you familiar with the Letterman jacket game?
Letterman jacket, baby. I mean, I think about it, and it's just, if you're JJ Watt or you're anyone else on that team, like, I mean, is that the worst thing someone could bring up to you? Like, I mean, is that if you ever are in an argument with them or in a fight, you should just keep that picture on your cell phone and just show it to them walking in with the letter jacket, and you win every single time. It could be your most embarrassing life moment.
Yes, and crushed on in that game. It was a primetime game, as I recall, right? I think a Sunday nighter. I went something like 1-4 the rest of the way. I don't quote me on that, because they had a playoff game. They were 1 and done, and the next year didn't make the playoffs, just collapsed, all because, you know, the ancient Greeks warned us about this. They spoke of hubris.
Yes.
And climbing, you know, your wax wings brought you too close to the sun, and that was probably the high water mark of the entire franchise, because they were maybe the Super Bowl favorite. They were certainly on the short list of them.
Oh,
And yeah.
And they were
And-
also like, I mean, it was one of those things too, where, that moment just solidified. There's certain teams that every time they'd come to Foxborough, they'd crap themselves. They'd find a way to crap themselves. Like there was very few teams that you could look at that come in with no fear. I would say Harbaugh's got to be the number one guy. Like every
Yeah.
time he's
Yeah.
not afraid of the Patriots, has never been afraid of the Patriots. That guy always plays with balls when he gets here. But on the other side of that, like the Texans, you just knew no matter how good they were going to find a way to vomit on their shoes. And the minute I saw those leather jackets, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. Like this is going to be really bad. And they're going to live with this and it's going to suck. So I've always thought of Houston being that kind of team. Another reason why I'm fascinated with them. With all that talent, they just couldn't get their stuff together at all, ever. It's almost infuriating. If I was a Texans fan, I don't know. It just seems like it would be like what being a Patriots fan was back in the day, Jerry. I'm sure.
Yeah. And I mean, did you ever think you'd live to see the day? I mean, my point that I'm going to make is I think you're right about that. I think fans are starting to turn on that franchise, especially in the wake of the whole, the fiasco with Hopkins and what's going on with Watson, is that when Mac Jones threw that touchdown to Hunter Henry, it sounded like a home game.
It did.
And as if I know my geography, and I've learned a lot from comics like Jack Easterby, football's really big in the state of Texas. And
right, just like the belt buckles.
yeah,
That was the other part of the joke. They're huge. You got a headlight for that belt buckle? Oh, everything's bigger. God, I want to watch that again now. I think I need to watch that on repeat. This is like,
you know what? Yeah, we're gonna have to put the link as we in the comments as we post this thing, because we didn't do it justice in that short clip that we played here. So like your thoughts overall in this game? I mean, for the first half, it was nightmare fuel. It was worst case scenario, and the defense reminded me of the late 2000s before like Shertenlieb arrived, and this secondary was filled with Wheatleys and Will Heights and Dwayne Starks or whatever, and they went through this gulf of like absolutely lacking any ability to cover anybody, to make third down stops, and they were winning like the mediocre quarterback like good guy award week after week, where they'd take guys you never heard of like Matt Moore and they'd light them up for 300 yards. And this was perilously close to being a lost season before that idiotic punt attempt that turned the whole game around.
I was thinking about this. There's a grand total of 2 people that I trust on this team. Matthew Judon, way up here. Matthew Judon is everything that you wanted and more. A little below it, Mac Jones. Mac Jones has been steady, solid, and he's been way above my expectations. And then no one else. Like those are literally the 2 guys on this team that I feel pretty good about. Everything else, it's like, I mean, when is the last time you felt good about a Patriots win? Think about that. Like, when is the last time you were like, wow, that was an awesome win? Because even when they win, the games they've been winning, if they would have obviously beaten, Tampa Bay, that would have been, amazing. But even the games that they win, going back to last year, you never really felt great about them. You felt like, whew, we got away with that one. Thank God.
That's an outstanding point. Like it would be like maybe one of the pre-COVID wins, like last year, like Cam Newton's first game where he looked good. Like, okay, they pulled a starting quarterback out of their butt in late June, and okay, I feel really good about that one. And then, but since then, it's pretty much been wins that you say, oh boy, they were lucky, or they played some stiffs, or it's been like the Tampa game, which is a moral victory. And I've said on this podcast and in print, I'm a Patriots fan. I don't believe in moral victories. I prefer them as immoral as possible.
Sure.
Cheat, get a lucky break, let the other team make idiotic mistakes. And they're still doing it. We're 5 games in.
Yeah.
And between, dumb penalties and negative plays and yet another fumble on the 1 yard line, I don't know what. I guess I still don't know who these guys are.
Yeah, it's true. But the one thing I will say is that I'm not like down on the team. Like that's the weird thing about all of this. And maybe it's because my expectations were kind of low going into the season. As long as I continue to see Mac Jones develop, and I mean, there's parts of it that I'm down on, but it's like I'm not like crushed. I don't think this team sucks. And you heard what's his name? Who was the defensive player for Tampa Bay last week who said, this is a 1-3 team, but they don't play like a 1-3 team. And I think that there's still part of that. I think that they're still trying to figure crap out. And if you go by the old Belichick type of, the school of thought, this is still supposedly the preseason for them. When does the real football start? Usually, what is it? December is when the real football starts, or, the end of November.
Right.
Like, what's the deal? It's like, we still got a little while for them to fill, trying to fill out what everyone's supposed to be. I don't know. I get disheartened by the running backs more than anything. This was supposed to be a major strength of this team, and they can't keep the damn ball in their hands. I mean, between, obviously, I don't know how Harris is now. Is he out? I mean, it looks like he cracked his ribs.
Yeah, they're not going to say until they have to say, and I mean, Gronk left the field 2 weeks ago and he looked like he was going to be like carried off in a hearse, and the x-rays were negative, and then he misses the Patriots game and he's talking about punctured lungs. So ribs are a weird thing. And I just, that a prime example of that, Jacoby Ellsbury at the height of his powers busts a rib and plays like 7 games in a season. And all these people that are more sofa than man, we're calling him soft. I'm like, you can't get in there and play. Like, have you ever had busted ribs? It's all you can do to get in and out of a car, much less turn on a slider on your fists or whatever. So
don't even cough, much less fart. It kills.
There's no position where you can sleep comfortably or whatever. So, the good Lord willing, if the creeks don't rise, Harris will be back, because, even though he had one huge pickup, does anybody want Brandon Bolden carrying the rock? Is that the recipe for success? And you know what? And if Josh McDaniels takes that page out of his playbook that has the screen pass to Brandon Bolden, just delete that file.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah, you save it in a Dropbox maybe for someday when it's not Brandon Bolden. I also, and I tweeted this out ahead of time, just want to be clear. I'm not being political if I yell, "Let's go, Brandon."
Yeah, you're not political. Yes.
Okay, that's an obscure joke, but that's okay. I'm gonna, Nick Fasol, you had a great point about missing Jalen Mills before Rich joined us.
Yeah, that was honestly, I think, a big part of this week where the defense struggled, the secondary, and not having Jalen Mills, I think, is what led Mills on the other side of the Texans to be so dominant. He threw for 300 plus yards, and he kind of blew us up in the air. While Mac Jones, he threw for, I think, over 250. He was 23 for 30, but I think the better quarterback, I wouldn't say today, but more dominant was probably Mills on the Texans.
Oh, he was insane. And the third down conversions were just, they just became automatic.
Yeah.
Or the ones that they didn't convert, that you say, all right, well, they're going to get on 4th and 2. And it seemed like the Patriots were doing this rotating crop of cornerbacks opposite J.C. Jackson, who also had arguably his worst career game.
Yeah.
I mean, Jackson was getting picked apart, but they had Devin McCourty up on outside the numbers on a receiver at one point. They tried Kyle Duggar out there. I'm sorry. Now
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But McCourty has looked bad, and that one, I think, was the first one that went over JC's head, and McCourty was there. I mean, basically, he just broke the guy's ankles when he took off. I mean, McCourty, the old boogeymen are looking slow. Van Noy hasn't looked great either, and obviously we know what's going on with Hightower. It's a little scary, and that part of it has been a little suspect. But as I said, Matthew Judon's been the one guy who has saved their ass. Whenever they've been able to, what was it, 2 sacks in a row that basically got them, saved them 4 points. They were,
right. That was the first real stop that they made as a defense, and it was Judon both times. And one, I think it was a bull rush, and we just overpowered the blocker. And the other one was just him getting off the ball quick and just being elusive. So he's got a total game. He drops into coverage. He's stout against the run. You know, I'd say their second best defensive player has been again Jalen Mills. And he's been a bit of a revelation in that his whole thing was versatility. Like there were games last year where he played 20 or more snaps at 3 separate positions. And then the following week he'd play like 50 snaps at outside corner. And then the next one he'd be as a free safety and, you know, up on the line and in the box or whatever. Out of necessity, he's had to pretty much take the opponent's number 2 target. And he did great against Godwin in the Tampa game. I mean, he held him to, I think, like 25, 27 yards in that neck of the woods, which is a win. And without him, they just don't have depth at that position.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's a shame too, because now we know there's not that hope that we had as we were all sitting there just saying, all right, guys, hold it together until Stephon Gilmore comes back. Just hold it together. Don't fall apart, because once he gets back, I mean, it's amazing how when you get a quarterback that's just that talented, who can take out that number 1 guy every game, everything else just falls into place. And now that he's gone, which I still, and Jerry, maybe you can explain all this to me, but I still have no idea how the hell we got to the point. I saw you tweet something after he got, and I said it on the air too, and I credited you. This was a worst case scenario. Like, I mean, there was that you couldn't have handled this any worse. The amount you got back for him, when it happened, how it all went down. I honestly can't think, other than not getting the 6th round pick, how it could have been any worse.
Yeah, I say again, if you're in hospice care, if you're looking for some reason to hold on, you know, 2023, you'll get that 6th rounder, and you'll get to see. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna all be worthwhile. Look, for the life of me, you know, I can't make sense of it other than they've been making a good faith effort on both sides to try to get a deal done. But, you know, part of the job is to anticipate, like, you know, where their position is and how far off you are. And then when they freed up some money through some restructured deals or whatever, and you said, okay, well, the salary room is up to, like, you know, the cap room is up to like 6 million and some change. Okay, well, kick that to Gilmore and get a half a season out of him. But I mean, Gilmore certainly made it sound like he was amenable to one more year with some extra dough, or do nothing and then just say, well, you know what, come play a half a year for the money that you're already going to be paid, and then prove yourself and then go out and cash in. They didn't even do that. And then it was another one of these trades that they've made where it seems like they're being, Belichick's being, you know, Mr. Nice GM. Like, you know what, I'll do you a favor. You know, you're friends with the, I believe he's the neighbor of the Carolina GM or vice president or whatever. And so we'll trade you back home. Yeah, we won't ask for much. Kind of like what they did with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, you know, John Lynch is a good guy. Kyle Shanahan will be a nice landing spot for you. So we'll just
pennies on the dollar. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And again, I'd rather have him going full on, you know, Brian Cox in Succession, like just crush your enemies before you, and don't give a damn about people who helped bring you success if you can't get a deal out of them. So yeah, all I can think is they didn't feel like he was worth more than a X number of dollars because he had a declining year in 2019, and he's north of 31, and so they don't want to sign him to a long-term deal that they're going to be stuck with. But you know, we're all creatures of the now. You know what I mean? We're all about what do we want? You know, we want instant satisfaction. When do we want it? What do you think?
They essentially traded him for Jamie Collins, because that's basically what they were freeing up money for, was in order to bring Jamie Collins in. Now, Jamie Collins didn't have a bad game. As a matter of fact, he had one really good play that I can remember. That one that held them back before the final drive.
Yeah, the sack where they just left him completely unblocked. He went right past the guard for a sack. That was huge. They arguably won the game because Jamie Collins was there.
So listen, if he continues to play well, you know, then maybe we'll look back and go, listen, we still kind of got fleeced, but you know, what do you know? it'll soften the blow a little bit. But I don't believe that that's the case. I mean, Jamie Collins, unless this is another one of those these miracle Bill Belichick brings back a guy and all of a sudden they're great again. But I mean, he was Dan Campbell's trash, and
Right.
now the Patriots get him here, and hopefully, as I said, that magic can work for a second time with Jimmy Collins, after having him come back. We'll
Right.
see.
They do have a genius for getting the most out of him,
Yeah.
that other people can't, but it's always short-lived.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
all right. Second Tolkien reference. It's a Gollum Smeagol thing.
Okay.
When they've got Smeagol, he can make impact all around the field. And I get that this game he didn't have a ton of reps, and frankly, John Bentley started out with a great game, but there's plenty of room for linebackers who can go sideline to sideline and make plays behind the line of scrimmage on this team. I thought Hightower had a little bit of a bounce back game, but it's only because he just hasn't. He's been the worst version of himself since he came back, and maybe the COVID year off didn't do him any favors, and he's slowly getting back into it. But the alternative might just be he's lost a step, and it is he can make up for a lot of that because he's smart and he anticipates the ball. But at some point, your feet can't, it can't make up for you.
Sure. Yeah.
For you have been a quick mind and being able to read plays. So, there's a lot
Jerry,
to
real
be
quick,
concerned about.
I'm kind of stuck here. Okay. So when Jamie Collins was first here, he started off as Smeagol, the very nice Hobbit, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And he started freelancing. And once that happened, that was basically Bill Belichick hearing my precious coming from the locker room. And they traded his ass over to the Orcs in Cleveland. And and then once, he was there and ended up sucking, Bill Belichick brought him back. And once again, he was able to somehow transform from the fiery depths of Mordor back into the great Smeagol once again.
Yeah, Belichick is Frodo in this scenario,
Okay, all right.
and everyone else is Sam. Who just silly. When did he play for Matt Patricia? No,
Who's Matt Patricia? Because is he
silly, stupid fat hobbitses? No, I'm not going to body shame on the show.
Okay.
He wasn't with Patricia in Detroit, was he? Because that was 2019.
Maybe. I think Patricia brought him in, right? Didn't Patricia?
Okay.
Brought him in? Yeah.
Yeah, because he brought in just a fuck ton of Patriots players and coaches.
It was Amendola. I think Jamie Collins might have been one too. Matt Patricia, by the way, is he the new Ernie Adams of this team?
I think Ernie Adams did so many things that they had to replace him with several people, like kids trying to sneak into an R-rated movie on, wearing a giant trench coat on top of each other's shoulders. So he's certainly in there on the contract negotiations. We've confirmed that. My guess is he's breaking down film and doing quality control like that. But Ernie Adams, if I'm not mistaken, and he's the international man of mystery, so we'll never know for sure. But I think he was the guy reviewing the replays.
He was more than that. I think he was the guy who knew where the bodies were buried. I think he was the one who knew all of Bill Belichick's secrets. And I think Ernie was the only one in the world that Bill Belichick could tell him everything he needed. I think he was behind any kind of scheme, any kind of advantage that they got. Ernie was the guy. And I think now that he's gone, Bill's like, who's somebody that will forever be in debt to me if I try to once again give them a career in the NFL after they've embarrassed themselves by failing miserably in Detroit? Oh, yes, Matt Patricia.
Like, he'll do whatever I want. Like, all right, slap red paint on your ass and dance for me, monkey.
Yeah, right. He is Spider in the Goodfellas movie. Belichick's firing at his feet when he's not bringing drinks fast enough.
You and Fred tend to be kind of anti Matt Patricia. Is that fair to say? I don't want to characterize.
Yeah, well, Fred, it's almost a personal thing because Fred's a Lions fan. And Fred knew, the minute that Patricia showed up and all the stories coming from camp where he was trying to be Captain Arnold. First of all, I have anything against any Bill Belichick people on the tree who try to be Bill Belichick when they leave. There's been very few who have not. I don't think Bill O'Brien was that way. And I don't think Brian Flores is really that way. But when Mangini left and tried to be Bill Belichick, that was a disaster. McDaniels, when he went Denver. Oh, it was embarrassing.
McDaniels wore gray hoodies and cut the sleeves off.
He did.
Now I do that for just kind of when the intimate times between the Irish Rose and I. And then afterwards I'll say, like, some things we did well, some things we're gonna have to get better in all three phases. I'm not gonna know until I've looked at the film. But
You've already released a statement on how it was.
so I could see where Fred would feel that way if he still has allegiance to the Lions or any kind of emotional connection. But what went on in Detroit wasn't all on Patricia, because I will never forget when in training camp, when someone would screw up and they would do the Patriots thing, like you got to run a lap, the media in Detroit was appalled. They fell on I watched a podcast where these like three writers, these three beat reporters, like falling on their fainting couch, like outraged that he would so disrespect professional players by having them run a lap. Like what? It interfere with the tradition of winning that the Lions have had, this golden legacy that they've built for themselves, never making it to a conference championship game, never mind making it to a Super Bowl. I think it's just the whole culture there was dead set against him trying to transplant the Patriots' methods for doing things.
Yeah, I just think that it sucks enough to play in Detroit that to have some guy come in there and immediately just start, who has earned no respect in that locker room, none. And if you remember, he did come off one of the worst defensive Super Bowls ever. I mean, it was a disaster. And I remember when they ended up signing him, I was just like, you like what you just saw there, Detroit fans? You a big fan of the that final game he had there with the Patriots? Not too
As a matter of fact, I remember thinking at halftime that the Lions are going to just renege on his contract, like right now. We'll just pay him off and just get rid of him. And I thought too, after the following year when they beat the Rams, kept them out of the red zone, the 11th highest scoring offense of all time at that point. And Brian Flores kept them out of the red zone. My first thought was, Patricia has a lot to answer for.
Yep, no question. Yeah. I mean, listen, I know that the fans were booing Patricia. Fred, I think, went to the second game of the season. I think it was a Monday Night Football thing, and he had flown out there to go watch Detroit, and like the fans had already turned on the guy. Like, and also, it's one of those things too where he didn't say the magic words, and that's what Dan Campbell said. And for some reason, it's like, telling like the ugly girl she's pretty. If you just go to Detroit and you say, I love Detroit and I want to stay here, and this is like a great city. If you just kiss the city's ass, that whole entire fan base will love you and embrace you for it. Dan Campbell, it's the first thing he did. I know this is a hardworking blue-collar steel mill town. You guys basically sleep in dirt every day. You eat dirt and you fight in the streets. And we're going to come here and we're going to make you proud every morning and shower you in beer. And all of a sudden, the town, they bought it. His record sucks. Patricia probably had a better record at this point of the season, I think he did, than Dan Campbell does. But the fans love the guy. They love him, and they bought him because he kissed their ass the minute he came in and told them he loved them.
I love every part of you, from your long stretch of abandoned city blocks to your empty factories to the places that the police will not go into. I even liked the Detroit that's in RoboCop.
That's right. That's what I say. I even love the fact that eventually the robots are going to take over in this town right here. The apocalypse starts in Detroit, and I'll be here for it. Damn it, eating dirt.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
They're 0-5, sadly, after today's loss. But the man who did say he'll bite your kneecaps off, he did have some balls on him today, going for 2 against the Vikings and actually succeeding. I thought at that point it was going to be a turning game, but this is not a Lions podcast. This is a Patriots podcast. So let's get back to it.
They still love him there. But you know what? But Dan Campbell, no one's turned on Dan Campbell. And that just shows how poorly Matt Patricia came in and handled the media. Like, you can't pretend you're Bill Belichick, because you're not. No one's Bill Belichick. No one is. And you can't handle the press the way Bill Belichick does. You can't be as gruff as Bill Belichick is to anybody else. I mean, you know, say what you will. Listen, Bill O'Brien was a disaster, but at least the press liked him for a while. You know what I mean? They were on his side because he was a normal human being. He talked like a normal human being. And unfortunately, you have to earn what Bill Belichick has with the press and with the fans. That is something that no one else other than him can do. No
Right.
one.
And, you know, if you watch old film, and I've been looking a lot at stuff that's exactly 20 years old, you know, doing some retrospectives or whatever, and a series of blogs I'm calling the GOATest story ever told. Because, you know, thank you. Feel free, everyone, to high five your screen right now as I do my epic wordplay. And you see like old clips of Belichick, and he was, if not charming, he was at least approachable.
Yes.
There's that one that is going to come up in a couple of weeks where Bledsoe was healthy and Brady was, you know, getting the starting nod anyway. But during that week when they were asking him, the press said, well, have you pulled the players? He goes, oh, yeah, well, pulling the players, pulling the postman, we're pulling the third graders. We're going to ask everybody, you know, and they got a huge laugh. But once he won, it was like, okay, I don't need you people anymore. And he started treating them like, you know, like flies buzzing around him. And we loved him for it. And I still do. It's a little tough when you've accomplished nothing and now you're the head coach and you're standing behind the podium and you're trying to like just be dismissed. Remember, didn't he tell some reporter, and then we'll get back to the Pats, like to sit up straight or something?
Yeah. That's the other thing. I completely forgot about that. Now you're reminding me of it. I'm like, yeah, why was it that I truly hated Matt Patricia during that time? And you're right. He was addicted. One of the reporters like, sit up straight and speak clearly or something like that. I'm like, you a-hole. You didn't earn this. I mean, think about this. Bill Belichick, you know, you talk about him being like more approachable back in the day. He had to do the dance like everyone else when they first started coaching. I don't know if you remember this, but remember when he was first the coach of Cleveland, he did that TV show where he did a jokey sketch where he was making his mom's famous peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it even had like weird like clown music in the background, like get ready for wackiness. And he's sitting there making like a peanut butter and jelly, and the host is some guy who's probably never watched a football game in his life. But he did it. He went along with it. You know, he was like, listen, this is what coaches do to kind of, you know, show that they're normal human beings. And I don't think that guys in his tree have gotten that. When they try to get out there, they think they're instantly Bill Belichick. And you got to play the game, man. You got to dance a little bit for the people before they trust you.
Yep. It was on raisin bread.
Yes.
And he put the peanut butter on the bread first and the jelly in the middle so it wouldn't get soggy, which I've been doing ever since that clip first surfaced. And you know what? That's what we need more. Like enough of him and Zoe and the Bellastrator and spending 5 minutes talking about the punt return team because they doesn't want to talk about anything like real. Like let's have him and Zoe making school snacks for the kids. Speaking of coaches that are hard to replace, to me, Sneaky, the MVP of this game, offensive line coach Cole Popovich, who was also a co-offensive line coach last year after Scarnecchia left.
Yeah.
Talk about replacing the irreplaceable guy. You know, Nick, Scarnecchia was brought in by, for my money, the worst head coach the Patriots ever had, Ron Meyer, during the first Reagan administration. And retired once, they brought him back. He retires again. And today, this game, they had, I think, the best performance their offensive line has had all season, and 80% of the starters were gone. And this was going to be a strength of the team. And I don't know if anybody looked at that lineup with like Freinds and Heron and said, okay, this looks like they're going to have a nice pocket. They're going to be able to run the game, but I'll be damned if they didn't play outstanding.
Now, can you give him credit when he's the same guy who has been dealing with better talent over the first 3 games and they've sucked? I mean, it's can you give him that, or was this kind of a holy crap? These guys got in there and really wanted to impress, you know, in one of their first starts. Because I'm with you. I thought today was fantastic, but bar was pretty low to start with.
Okay, well, he's bringing up his grade point. Let's just say, because, you know, the right tackle spot in particular has been atrocious. And I know I'm going to bungle his name, even though he's been with the team for a few years, but Yoni Kajust, to me, it's Kajusti, but we're calling him Kajust during the game. I was like, where has he been, because he looked outstanding in practice, and it's hard to evaluate guys now because practice is so rare and seldom seen.
Yeah.
But, my brother turned me on to this guy when they drafted him. He had seen him play for West Virginia. I was at West Virginia games because my son goes there. Never noticed the left tackle. The Pats get him in like the mid rounds, and this is his first start. And I thought he was outstanding. At least you didn't notice him.
Yeah.
A couple times he pulled on the aforementioned outside pitch to Bolden and was upfield on a screen pass or two. Just know, like, I was expecting that Mac Jones was going to be under assault. It was going to be like Jackie Chan, where they're just coming at him from all directions, 2 and 3 at a time. And he had a pocket. They were able to run.
Yep.
Because we were saying last week, what would have happened if they had 20 rushing yards against Tampa instead of -1?
True.
And off the top of my head, Nick, do you know what the total rushing yards was today?
Off the top of my head, I do not actually.
Yeah. I know they didn't crack
-1.
100, but it looked like a professional NFL rushing game in spite of Harris being down and Bolden not being that good.
Anything's better than last week, and I'd like to see, what happens with the rest of the line when they get healthy, when they come back. I know Trent's going to be gone for a while. By the way, Trent, greatest tattoo in NFL history. Have you seen the one that's on his arm right here?
Yeah. Oh, that's
him with the strippers.
Yeah, it's him wearing his helmet and no shirt, holding the earth over his head. And then there is a woman in front of him with his jersey on, who's obviously taking care of business in the front. And then there's another one on the side who's, I don't know, maybe taking care of business around the back. And I just want to know how he can go up and speak to the press or be at his locker in front of a bunch of people with microphones with that thing staring right at him and no one ask him about it. Like, not once. Like, it's literally staring. It takes up his entire shoulder down to the elbow, the greatest, most graphic tattoo of all time. And not one reporter has said, hey, what's the deal behind that tattoo right there?
Come on, but who's going to be the first one to do it? You think it'd be like Mike Reese or, just trying to picture, Burt Breer? Like, who's going to be the guy? So
we put a bounty out. We said on the air, we're like, all right, the first reporter to do that will get whatever, like, concert tickets you want to go to. We'll get any kind of, we actually put a bounty out. No one has done it yet. No one has taken us up on it. And so it neat. Jerry.
Okay. You know what? Yeah. I'm feeling the clarion call. You've inspired me now. Avengers assemble. I just I tend to not go to the stadium to watch the games. I'm better at my job doing it from home. And that includes press conferences. I'll do the virtual ones once in a while, but I haven't talked to Trent Brown. Now I'm going to have to do that. And I can do it there's a subtle way to do it. Like, so Trent, does this indicate that you are in a throuple? Is this a committed relationship? Is it always MFF or sometimes, or is it sometimes MMF?
No, were you actually wearing your helmet when this happened? Did it happen? What's her name? I would just continue to ask follow-up after. No one else would be able to get a question in. Like, I would just say, hey, can you tell us the backstory of your tattoo? And when he answered it, I would not let him change the subject. I would just continue, because obviously he doesn't care if the world knows about it. I mean, it's right there. He doesn't wear a sleeve. He hasn't tried to black it out. It's right there. So I think fair game, man. Let's get behind the tattoo. It's like behind the music, a 60-minute special on what's going on in that tattoo right there.
I know sometimes people bring a photo to a tattoo shop, right? And say, can you recreate this? Was it that, or did he just sort of say, look, here's a big canvas, because he's a large gentleman, like do what you will. I mean, because, that arm is like the Sistine Chapel. I mean, you could do a lot with the space that big, and that's what he chose.
Did this happen, or were you willing it into existence? Like, once you had it, there were people saying, well, he's obviously done it before, so let's do it with him. He's obviously an expert at this sort of act. So maybe it was just a really clever way of getting to that place where he wanted to be.
When it was Hard Knocks and he was on the Raiders, I don't want to say it was, but I think it was brought up because that's what I was just looking up. I think I remember when I was watching Hard Knocks, they asked him about it. and they asked him to describe it. Yeah, I'm not 100%, but I remember watching Hard Knocks and the tattoo topic came up, and then he basically was just like laughing it off and telling them, what do you think it means?
Well, that's not good enough. That is not good journalism. That calls for Jerry Thornton on the case. I need you to get the old Scoops hat out there, Jerry.
I've been looking for a purpose. I need like a calling, just something to motivate me, a life goal, and that's going to be it. Are you guys fans of Miko Grimes?
Miko,
the wife of
Grimes, Elon Musk, yes.
Yeah, Minka Grimes was the player who's with the Dolphins. He's been around the league.
Yeah. Right.
His wife has posted like on Instagram and Twitter pictures of birthday cakes that she's made that look very much like a Trent Brown tattoo. She had one where it was for his birthday and she was on her knees,
sure,
expressing her love physically for him. And I love it. This is the stuff that maybe wasn't happening back during like Bronco Nagurski's days. And, if only Joe Namath like had the latitude,
yes,
that, he would have had one across his chest of him at, some Toots Shores club in Manhattan with a couple of cocktail waitresses. And
I just think about how great would it be, Jerry, if like on his first game back, Trent Brown finally returns. It's the big story. We finally get Trent Brown back. And the very first question he gets in his locker, all the cameras are there. What's up with the tattoo, man? What's the backstory? Like not anything about his rehab. Just the very first time that he speaks to the media when everyone's there is about Captain Fun Time.
No one's got any questions about my calf injury. No.
Why would we when that's right there?
Yeah.
And asked by Jerry Thornton. That would put it over the top.
There you go, Jerry. Come on, man.
And then I can die happy. And by the way, look, I don't want to go back on what I said earlier about how a question someone's injuries, but I was sweating bullets when he came out of the game after 7 plays in week 1.
Yeah.
And when they said calf strain, I'm like, great. Wow. Dodged a bullet there. This has to be the mother of all calf strains. Because not only has he missed the last 4 weeks since, but now he's IR'd for at least another couple of weeks. And I mean, was it not a strain? Was his calf removed? And I grant you, he needs a big calf. He's again a large gentleman. Did it have anything to do with the 2 ladies that he was with? Did he not stretch out beforehand? Because that's important, especially as you get older.
You see, I mean, it's like the only thing about Trent Brown is that he hasn't quite given us the benefit of the doubt. When you kind of hear about his conditioning when he was with the Raiders and just, it was almost like a buyer beware situation when they brought him here. You knew that there was a chance that there could be a little bit of suspect, not behavior, but discipline, I guess. And so I wonder, because you're right, calf strains, how bad is it if you're going to be out for, half the season? That seems a little, I'm not a medical expert, but usually when you hear calf strain, like, oh, okay, a couple weeks back in. Not right. This is strange.
Yeah, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast before or written it, but I'm a big believer that injuries, and this especially goes for baseball, I want them to have 2 elements. One, it's a part of the body that every 4-year-old can name from the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes.
Sure, yeah.
And 2, I want an action verb. I want a break, a tear, a rip, whatever. I don't need Clay Buchholz had an avulsion, or a tightness in his quad, like tightness, like get out there and pitch. And, calf strain, while strain is technically an action verb, it's pretty much a passive one.
Sure.
So again, you're right. He has that one great season on his resume.
Yeah,
he came here in 2018 as a backup. Isaiah Wynn went down, and they completely pulled a miracle with him because he was great right up into facing the best pass rush in the league in the Super Bowl, and they got nothing on him. I think he gave up like 1 pressure in the entire postseason or whatever.
Yeah.
But without him, it's been this domino effect on the rest of the line that they weren't pulling out of it until this game. And somehow with 4 backups and David Andrews, bless him, they managed to put together their best effort of the season. So I think for the time being, I'd be happy with just these 5 and let's not mess anything up further.
It's true. And it's one of those things too. Is like, I mean, how great would it be if they could make this work? Like if they could get these other guys, these younger guys, and they can get them out there and somehow just say, well, I guess we just took the entire project, threw it away and started over. And it was better than the sum of what we had before, except for David Andrews, of course.
Yeah.
I would love that. I mean, think about how good Mac Jones looks when he has time. I mean, he looks good when he doesn't have time. But when he's got time, I mean, I've been impressed. And, you know, and it means everything to that running game. I just think that if they believe that Mac Jones is the guy, and I know they do, like now is the time, then I got to think they got to start like with their first draft pick next year. They got to do like what the Colts did, you know, when they said, let's get Quentin, what's his name? Quentin Nelson. That he's like the only offensive lineman that everyone knows the name of because he mangles human beings. You know, that's where I would put all my chips on the table from the next draft. Just protect this kid because he's obviously good enough. At least so far, he seems to be good enough to be the guy you want to view as the future quarterback for this team. Keep the dude safe, man, because how many times have we seen it, and we're seeing it a little bit this year, where good quarterbacks can just get ruined.
Right.
I mean, like you worry about, I know that Trevor Lawrence is awesome, but that guy's just, he could get ruined down there with Urban Meyer as coach. Urban Meyer could completely mess that kid up. You see it with Zach Wilson. I don't want that to happen to Mac Jones. I don't want him to be ruined because he's not getting the right protection and he doesn't have a coach that cares about his well-being.
Absolutely great point. And he's not the physical specimen that these other guys are. And
Yeah.
I mean, you saw a great example of it with the Bucks when they grabbed Tristan Wirfs, who went from, you know, highly rated prospect to flat out one of the best tackles in the NFL. So yeah, and the Pats have had a genius for building the offensive line, whether it's, you know, Andrews, who went undrafted, to Joe Tooney, who's like a 4th rounder. I think Shaq Mason might've been 5th rounder, and their process for scouting and developing these guys has been outstanding. And you're right, that's got to be priority 1 next year. And with the time we have left, we really haven't talked about the skill position guys, and we should. But I want to start with Jones. You sound like maybe you were a skeptic going into the season. Do you?
Not skeptical, but I didn't expect this. I mean, he is one of those guys that, and I saw it in the preseason. When you went from Cam Newton to Mac Jones, it was like Cam Newton was one of those things. This could be great or it could be awful. Like you never knew. Like it could go one way or the other. You could see something amazing or something that's absolutely atrocious. Mac, slow and steady, gets up there and just reliable. And he looked like he instantly had command. Cool and calm, almost to the point where it seemed like he was on drugs. Joe Montana-like is what I think of. Remember when Joe Montana, that story where he was at the Super Bowl and, you know, he was on the way to a game-winning drive. And
it was the one against the Bengals.
Yes. Yeah. And he goes, hey guys, is that John Candy in the stands that I saw over there? And they're like, are you kidding me? This is like one of the most important moments of our careers. And Joe Montana, the greatest of all time at that point, was just thinking about John Candy hanging out in the stands. And that's the vibe I get from Mac Jones. He just seems almost like he's on drugs. He's so calm. And I like that. He doesn't make many bad decisions. When he does, it's a shock, you know? Right. And he just is as unrookie of a player that I've seen in a while at the quarterback position, just ready to go from the first snap. That guy he seems like he's been playing the league for years.
How do you callers feel about him generally? Because I might have been your show or another one on the station where someone just dismissed his entire career at Alabama by going, yeah, well, I mean, who do you ever play? They played Marin. Well, yeah, they played Marin and Ohio State in the championship game and Georgia and, Auburn. Yeah, okay, yeah, he played Marin. But do you find generally that people are behind Jones, or are you still getting bitterness like we shouldn't be in this situation? It should still be Brady or, God forbid, Cam Newton?
They're buying in now to Jones. I mean, I don't see how you can't. I think the big knock on him at first was, yeah, of course he was great. Look who he was throwing to.
Right.
You know, and that was the whole thing. And Bert said it on our show, Bert Breer, and he was right. He was like, you know, when they brought in Mac Jones, like Alabama had a better receiving core than the Patriots did. I mean,
Yeah.
you're picking those guys, and he's absolutely right. But you go back and watch some of those Alabama games, and I know it's kind of like a usual suspects moment where you kind of see things in reverse this way. But I mean, they didn't have to reach for almost any of those like big passes, and especially the championship game. Just looking at Alabama, he put it right where it needed to be every single time. He never was dangerous with his throws. He kept his guys out of danger from injury. He was just a smart player. And I think that people just dismissed it because he was on Alabama with all this talent around him. And now we're seeing that it's a lifetime. And you know his backstory. I mean, that guy has been training for this his entire life. On top of that, it's not just the physical football side of it. He's been dealing with psychiatrists, to get his head in the right place. I mean, his family has been all in with Mac the entire way, and it really seems to be paying off.
Yep.
The way his head, I think that's the most impressive thing, Jerry, is that his head, he just came in and he looks unflappable. The guy has been hit. He stood in the pocket, hard hit after hard hit. He's been, a lot of other quarterbacks would be shaken. Hell, we've even seen it with Brady where he gets cracked a couple times and starts to lose a little bit. Mac Jones has been solid even after getting wailed like he did in the first couple of weeks, and that's been the most impressive.
Yeah, and go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
If we're talking about early college day quarterbacks, when Mac first started at Bama and when Trevor Lawrence first started at Clemson, you would have expected them to come to the NFL and be role reversed. I mean, you look at Mac when he was getting his DUIs and living his life, it looked like he was going to be down and hanging out with Urban Meyer at the bar. But now, if Trevor Lawrence keeps hanging out with him, he's going to end up getting a Trent Brown tattoo on his arm.
And you know what? We should also be so lucky as to hang out with Urban Meyer. I mean, getting his sloppy seconds is you're eating from the best buffet in the city right there.
It is reaching Michael Scott levels with him, where like will he not shut up about the incident? Like he spoke about it, and it was weird because any other coach, you don't have to speak about this personal stuff, and then he spoke about it again, and then he continued to speak about it. I think he's had 3 total press conferences about this one stupid incident. And you're just like, dude, shut up. Like you're making it's really like watching one of the most uncomfortable episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm every time that guy steps to the podium. Awful for the people who he surrounds himself with there. Just like, this is our guy. This is our leader, our commander in chief.
Oh, and I'm so glad you mentioned Michael Scott too, because remember the one where he went on the sales call and he fell into the koi pond and they all just started laughing at him. And he was like really ripped that he wasn't part of the joke. Like when you do something dumb, you've got to lean into it.
Yes.
Every time I've ever tripped going up a stairs or whatever, I've turned to who's ever behind me and just went, the Pee Wee Herman, I meant to do that. And, they laugh and, okay, I did something dumb. He's incapable of that. So there's that great story. I'm kicking myself. I can't remember which reporter tweeted it out, but it was a thread of like 5 tweets about how an anonymous player said he's only met with the position groups.
Yeah.
The one time he met with the whole team, when he left, they all burst out laughing and he knew it. And and he's getting $12 million a year for the next like 6 or 7 years. I don't think his terms of his contract have been totally released, but they're stuck with him, or else they're going to have to eat an enormous sum of money because he put his hands between a girl's denim butt crack. And I just...
Now we're hearing that he apparently knew this woman, and the whole story that he was saying about it was just a couple or a party from next door that came over. I mean, there's now question as to whether or not this was somebody he had a relationship with, who was there. And once again, all of this stuff, does the digging stop if he stopped talking? If he stopped saying anything? And it just gets worse. Every time he says it, the story gets worse, and worse because he continues to talk. And I'm just like, shut up, dude. Shut up. You don't need to say a word. Shut up. It's over with.
Yep. You have the right to remain silent. What you lack is the capacity. Just don't. I've already talked about that. We're moving on. Belichick's greatest genius, and he has many, is taking a huge dust up and reducing it to nothing, letting all the air out of it. Even if it's not
the droids you're looking for.
Even if it's not a bad thing, even if it's just Tim Tebow being on the roster.
Oh,
all the TV trucks show up with the satellite uplinks and the whole bit. And I'll never forget his first practice. The guy says, "Hello, my name is Joe Forehead. I usually cover hard news for, station KRP, whatever." And Belichick said, "Well, he's here to help the team." "Yes, but what about him being here?" And like, he's like a lot of people on the roster, and they didn't know what to do. And the next day,
Oh yeah.
all the trucks were gone. And
Yep.
it was just the same,
Shut 'em down.
unwashed rabble that covers the team all the time. And I include myself in that. So
Is there anything better? Is there anything better that when there's like a story that's like gone past just football, when you get like the inside edition and people who don't usually come to the locker room that come in and try to get something out of Bill Belichick or the rest of the Patriots? It's the best. It's like gladiator games. Just watching them pick off one after the next. The only thing better than that press conference you're talking about, because the Tebow one was just a masterclass. That was great. The only one that was better was, do you remember after Deflategate? And it wasn't even Belichick, it was Brady when he goes, "Tom, I'm so-and-so from blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of kids asking right now, what's up with our hero?" Which might be the all-time greatest. What's up with our hero, man?
that was a full body cringe that you got cramps from it, and it lasted forever. And Brady just, he had the 4 agreements going through his head so that he couldn't say, he had to be nice about it. He had to stay on the high road instead of that's a situation where you go, I just want to be sure that I heard that right. Did you just say, so that's your question. That's the question that you're asking me, and just let them go. Well, okay, well, I don't know. I guess I made a complete fool out of myself, Tom. So,
Yeah.
and the fact that Belichick is friends with Meyer, you know that they haven't communicated. Hopefully, he deleted his number after Aaron Hernandez or whatever. Not to mention, I mean, he drafted the linebacker out of Florida. She's Brandon Spikes.
Brandon Spikes. Yeah.
Drafted him, and within hours of them drafting him, he had a chat roulette
with Doc Rivers' daughter. Was that right?
Was it Doc Rivers' daughter? I just remember she was like a 9, whoever she.
I think it had something to do with Doc Rivers' daughter. I think.
Oh, if not, Nick, we have to edit this out. If so, then good on you, Spikes. I just remember she looked like a more attractive Kim Kardashian.
He was okay. So according to the internet, I just checked because I had to double check.
Right, internet's right about these things.
Doc Rivers' daughter, and I'm not quite sure if that video was thing, but that was I remember at the time that was the story. So it may not have been with her, but he did date Doc Rivers' daughter at one point.
So if I'm Belichick, I'm going, Urban, did you know about this? just curious. Just let me know. And he drafted Dominic Easley, who didn't make it to the end of his rookie contract. There's a history of Urban Meyer guys that did not pan out here, and if that number is blocked on Belichick's phone, so much the better. So the guys that Mac Jones has to throw to before we're done with this, because we haven't really talked about him. I mean, Kendrick Bourne stepped up in a dumb penalty, and they again commit negative plays of their own volition in a much unpatriot-like way. They had was there one in the red zone that cost them a touchdown because the 2 guys were shifting at the same time or whatever. And I'm still shocked that they're not cleaning that up. But Bourne has started to show up, started to land as the guy that we hoped that he would be when, he came out of San Francisco with a lot of doubts about him.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm when it comes to, the guys that Mac's throwing it to, I don't really have a big problem, but they're not really. Put it this way, I think when I saw them sign those 2 tight ends, I immediately had this vision of Gronk Hernandez back in the day, which was one of the most amazing, dynamic 2 tight end. I mean, it was just like, when have you seen that done that effectively? And I was thinking maybe they're trying to go back to the glory days here. They're not quite doing that. As a matter of fact, as you know, the tight ends were obviously quiet at the first couple of games. But there's really not a ton to complain about. You know what I mean? It's like, kind of they're fine. It's like I wouldn't want any of them on my fantasy team, put it that way. But I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna crush any of them. Like no one's been like extremely disappointing. You know what I mean? It's like
we've been looking at, I think Nick and I talked about this before the season. We're like, what would be about the ceiling for these two guys? Because they're going to split their catches, and neither of them's going to be 100 catch guy. If they could combine for 100, 110, you'd take that. And they've tried other attempts at the 2 tight end thing too. It's just things never worked out. Like when Gronk was hurt, they had Martellus Bennett. There was only a couple of games where they were healthy at the same time. I remember when they brought in Scott Chandler, who was a head taller than Gronk. And then would be like taken, had turned invisible in the end zone by like a 5'11" cornerback. And you're like, how is this happening? He was just the softest giant I've ever seen in my life. And so this is their chance. And I told you on your show, like, with Jonnu Smith after the New Orleans game, I was thinking he might be a sleeper agent. Sent here by Mike Vrabel as punishment for trading him to Kansas City. But, he's had his spots, but Henry played his best game. Like he looked like the Hunter Henry we remember. That touchdown was a gorgeous throw. By Jones, and on the boundary, and almost got tipped, but it was not going to get picked off. And he had a couple of big throws there, so that's great. Jacoby Myers, though.
He had that drop pass. I know there was ended up being a flag, but I mean, it still would have gone in Patriots' favor because it was a flag on the defense, I believe, at that point. That pass was just, you got to catch that.
Right. He was like the guy with his phone at the urinal, and you're like, whoa, and he couldn't have been more open. It could not have been a better throw. And the one knock on Jones is he doesn't throw the ball deep. Well, that thing was 35 yards in the air if it was a foot, and it was right there. And but I still
like, how did he drop? That's one of those, like, how did he drop that? He's looking right at it. I mean, it's, as you said, he's wide open. Like, how do you drop that one? There's ones to get it. Like maybe you turn too slowly, or I don't know, get tripped on yourself. How do you drop that one?
Right. Exactly. And I mean, Nelson Aguilar has a reputation for that sort of thing. I've seen it happen a couple of times, but Myers doesn't have that. And I think it speaks in a larger sense to how guys are getting open in ways that maybe they were last year and we just didn't see it because Newton wasn't hitting them. But Jones has a way of reading the scheme and seeing where someone's going to go and when the breakdown's there. And the guys who watch the all 22s will tell you on like Wednesday, oh, he missed this one, he missed that one. Granted, that's going to happen. But I think like the larger picture is that he understands what a defense is throwing at him. Rarely does he look confused. Never for more than a play or two does he look like he doesn't belong in the league. He threw that one interception. That was really the first, I'd say, egregious interception he's thrown.
It's true. It's the first time you went, whoa, where did that come from? But that's a great thing. You have a rookie quarterback, and you're now this many games in, and for that to be the first time you went, oh, dude, that was awful. You're in a pretty good spot with your quarterback. If you're this far into the season and that's the first time you had a whiplash effect on something your quarterback did, who's a rookie.
Yep. And I love that with 1:30 to go in the half and no timeouts, they just went for it. When last year they were taking knees at the end of halves, and I'm thrilled that they did that. And then, he gets the ball with an advantageous clock and timeouts is disposable and goes down and bleeds it out. Granted, there was they got a break here or there and overcame a couple of negative plays, but he was throwing the ball on the money, and a game-winning drive is a game-winning drive, no matter how you see it. Nick, do you got anything to say before we let Rich get back to his life? He has an early wake-up call.
Honestly, no, that was a great show. I think we touched upon everything that I was going to bring up, and thank you very much, Rich. That was awesome.
Listen, Jerry and me together, it's always going to be gold. Always gold when Jerry's on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could just get rid of that toucher guy who's been dragging you down, that anchor on your ratings and your personality. No, I appreciate it. And he made a pitch to come on here. Friggin' gonna love to have him for sure in the next few weeks. A big thing going on outside of the Patriots and outside of 98.5 is your lovely wife is running the marathon this week. I know that unless you're a world-class distance runner, and I'm not entirely sure that she is, so I'm guessing she had to raise money for a worthy cause in order to qualify.
Yes. So she is for people who might not be aware, she ended up in 2013. She was diagnosed with leukemia. Things were really, really bad. Like, she had to be in the hospital for 5 weeks straight. She ended up like going in remission. She relapsed, and when she went back, she went to Dana-Farber, and they essentially saved her life. They had were researching a groundbreaking drug. She was one of the first to take it. It's called Revlimid. It's now available everywhere, but she was one of the first, and Dana-Farber were the people who helped develop it. And I'm not speaking hyperbole when they say they saved her life. So now she is doing everything she can to raise money for Dana-Farber, and she tried running back 3 years ago, and it was the marathon where remember the torrential downpour and a bunch of people had to quit. She had halfway through it, she ended up getting these shakes, and there was a doctor at the tent that said that she was suffering from hypothermia and that she had to stop running. And but she ended up going home, getting warm, and then she ended up going back later that night and running the rest of the way on her own after the race was done, which I thought was just an awesome thing to do.
Wow.
But this time it's her first time trying to conquer it, like fully, without any interruption. And she has been training her butt off, and she's raised, I think, between that race and this one, about $75,000 so far for Dana-Farber. So
Wow.
we're real proud of her. If you want to donate, you can to her race. It's if you go to our Twitter account @ToucherandRich, it's the first link at the top. You can click on it. But she is a badass, and she will hopefully conquer this thing and raise a lot of money for Dana-Farber in return. She makes me look like a massive wimp, which isn't tough to do, but she's definitely the tough one in the family.
Yeah, sometimes people inspire you so much that you're half tempted to just say, just knock it off. You know what I mean? Like, so, like we don't need help looking bad. But yeah, no, I'm thrilled. And I guess my next question is already asked and answered. I was going to ask how her health is doing, but she's running 26.2. I imagine that she's in the total tip-top shape, right?
She's doing great. She can wrestle a bear right now. She, the people at Dana-Farber, when you're done there, that's not it. They continue to, keep up with you even years past to make sure that everything's going well. So yeah, she's doing awesome, and it's going to be a big day tomorrow. I'm wearing the hat to support her. It should be a fun day. Hopefully she'll kill it.
Make the most of it, Rich.
Good luck.
Yeah, he's Rich Shertenlieb from the Toucher and Rich Show, and I'm going to do that thing like Tucker Carlson always does. Thank you for joining us.
Why do I look confused? I'm not sure. I'm just asking.
Dude, this is as much fun as I thought it would be. It even exceeded expectations. I'm glad it was a win because I was going to be in a very, very dark place if they didn't come back and win that, down 22-9. And winning at the final play is fantastic. So again, listen to Toucher and Rich every morning on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Listen the next time I'm on too. In the meantime, we'll be back next week with, I think, a guy who is seen as a bit of a villain by a lot of Patriots fans, but he's always been good to me. We'll have some laughs. So he'll be on to talk about the Cowboys game. In the meantime, Rich, thanks once again, and everyone who's listening, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sláinte.
Jerry, Nick, thank you guys.